forego the Pledge of Allegiance until the actual council meeting, so start off the roll call. Jesse,
Present.
Ron,
Here.
Jeremy,
Here.
Dave, here, Daryl,
Here.
Jeff. Okay.
Here.
Can I have an approval of the April 6th Committee of the Whole minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes from April 6th.
Can I have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Okay. Okay, you want to proceed with your presentation from Dr. Michael Cork, founder and CEO of Empower Analytics Group on data centers?
Trying to get him on here. We were
Okay.
just getting the meeting invite to him, so
All right.
working through some tech stuff.
April, can you hear me all right? Maybe yes, maybe no.
Can you pull up a little closer, please?
How's that?
Usually about the same.
Can I hang it on my ear?
That's right, you can just use mine.
That better work.
Don't get up too fast.
Dr. Court, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
Can you hear us? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can.
Perfect. Can everybody out there hear through the TVs? You can? Perfect. Thank you.
All right.
Um,
You want to go ahead? Whatever he's going to present.
Yep. So, Dr. Court, thank you for joining us this evening. Really appreciate your time and willingness to come in and speak with us. We're working through some, cobbling some things together tech-wise. So I know you can hear me okay. If other council members have questions as we go through it, I may have to relay that to you. But
Okay.
please, without further ado, if you want to introduce yourself and your organization and kind of what you study.
Sure. Yeah, well, it's nice to meet you all. Thanks for having me in. I am a environmental health scientist at the Harvard Chan School of Public Health, and also I'm a founder of a consulting group called Empower Analytics Group. And what we try to do is understand how data center infrastructure impacts community health to try to give communities the information they need to make informed decision making. And I'd be happy to today walk through a little bit what we do, give a little background on why I think it's really important to think about health when you're considering data center infrastructure development, and one little case study, and then kind of talk through what I think how it can help different communities, and we can go from there. So I'm going to share a couple of slides. I'm going to talk for probably 10-15 minutes, but feel free to interrupt with questions, and really welcome any thoughts you guys have. So we're going to try sharing my screen. Can you all see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Okay, so, right, I'm going to talk through a little bit of what the work that I've done as a consultant for Empower Analytics Group and why I think it's crucial. So, I like to give a little intro on how I think about what a data center is, because I think that it's such a large concept that we all can kind of come with a different perspective. One thing that I like to think about is anytime we use AI in our digital world, right, it feels like it's living right on our phone, but in reality, anytime we're asking AI a question, it is being translated and operated on in a physical structure like a data center. So I think of it as it's almost like we're sending mail, a request saying, hey, I want to help draft and text my friend. That is sent to a data center that performs all of that calculation, and then that sends back the answer. So data centers are a really important part of our digital infrastructure, right? The way that AI is supported. And these massive facilities are running 24/7, and they power our digital world, and they also consume a large amount of energy to do it, which I know that you all probably are familiar with. So one of the considerations for health is it's really important to think about where does that energy come from. So traditionally, data centers have already connected to the grid, but as you probably are aware, there's a lot of the there's a lack of kind of grid access. So a lot of developers are proposing, as it seems to be the case in your situation, building kind of gas turbines or on-site power plants to help power these facilities. And one of the things that I just want to emphasize is when we're thinking about data center impact, it's really important to think about where the energy is coming from, how that energy translates into pollution, and how that pollution is dispersed across space. I want to just give a little, to not get too technical, but one pollutant that I think is really important to think about when we think about data centers that are using on-site power generation, and that is fine particulate matter. This is a type of pollution that is responsible for 90% of the health impacts from pollution, and it just means a type of pollution that's really small particles. And these particles are small enough that they can go into your lungs and also enter the bloodstream, and so it's associated with a lot of different health outcomes. The reason I bring this up is there's actually a really robust science behind how an increase in this type of pollution can translate into things like increased deaths, increased asthma, impacts in communities, and we have a pretty clear understanding of how we can translate that. I also like this fact, this kind of picture, because this type of air pollution doesn't just come from a data center. It comes from combustion, so it can come from cars, it comes from the airline industry. But we also know from science that any increase in this type of pollution will increase the risk of specific health impacts, some of which are listed below, right? Stroke, lung disease, childhood asthma, premature death. So one thing that we are interested in doing at a Power Analytics Group is translating a potential proposal of a facility into these health impacts. And I want to walk through at a really high level how we do that, so it gives you a little bit of more understanding. One is we need to understand how much pollution leaves a plant, right? If you have a proposed facility that says, hey, we're going to operate the 800 megawatt power plant, oftentimes there's an air permit associated with it, where we know how much tons of pollutants are going to be leaving that facility. The next question is, how do we understand how that pollution spreads? We can use kind of scientific models to show how air pollution will spread through the air. We know that air pollution can travel far from its source. And we want to understand who might be impacted from that pollution. So if we understand where the pollution is traveling, then we want to understand who are these people, right? Who are these communities that are going to feel most of the effects from this pollution? And then we also use a EPA, so the Environmental Protection Agency has a framework for how we can quantify an increase in pollution into an increase in some of these health outcomes like premature mortality, like hospitalizations, and that helps give a framework, an economic framework. And it's a helpful way of measuring the potential health damages to weigh it in hand with the potential economic benefits to make sure all the kind of information is on the table. So this is kind of a really high level overview of what we do, but I wanted to show you an example of one facility that we looked at to kind of give an example of what we can deliver. So this is one data center in Northern Virginia, and what I'm showing on the left is actually a map of the air pollution that is going to be, we estimate to leave this facility. The star on the left is showing the location of this facility. You can see that what we've mapped here are all the different towns in this area. Now, we're looking at a specific region of the United States, and this inset shows you where we're looking at the eastern United States. So it's actually this Virginia, DC, Maryland area. And basically, I'm showing that darker red means there's more pollution. One thing that we showed from this report is that this facility, which is a pretty large facility in a more densely populated area, is associated with 3 to 7 additional premature deaths per year using this EPA model framework, and this translates to around $53 to $99 million in health damages. So why is this important? Why is this kind of data useful or important? I think that for communities or different decision makers, it does a couple of different things. One is it helps understand the trade-offs, right? When you're being approached to think about building a data center facility, it's really important to compare the economic benefits with the public health impacts to get a clear-eyed understanding of what you're agreeing to, but also what sort of negotiations you can have. I think it allows us to ask better questions, right? What are the total annual emissions associated with the facility? What assumptions are we using to look at potential impacts from air pollution? It also allows you to evaluate some alternatives, right? So what happens under different scenarios, right? What if we consider lower emission limits, cleaner technology, limits on generator use, using a mix of grid versus on-site power? And I think that it also can help negotiate stronger terms, right? Moves from a general concern that I think a lot of community members might feel around a data center with regards to health, with regards to other concerns, and it gives you a real quantitative answer and defensible answer to at least have a basis of understanding of what that information, what we're talking about. So it kind of goes from more nebulous, like, hey, I'm concerned about the health impacts, to a specific number based on peer-reviewed science. So here's some examples of what some communities might ask for based on this information. So, right, you can ask for, what are these permitted maximum limits, and maybe setting emission limits based on that information. Maybe limits on generator hours or peak operation. Again, these are, I kind of hinted this before, but there's different types of technologies that are present in terms of what types of turbines are being used, what emission controls, siting considerations, and then also commitments to air quality and noise monitoring by the facility itself. Okay, so I wanted to end with a little bit of an understanding of what kind of services we do at our Power Analytics Group. So I talked through a little bit of what a case study we did in Northern Virginia, and I want to talk through kind of two things that we offer that we do for communities and other interested parties. The first is this full health impact assessment. So this is what we did in Northern Virginia. It's a pretty intensive analysis where we do the full kind of exposure dispersion modeling. It takes around 300 hours worth of work to translate that into understanding where pollution would go, and also doing different scenario modeling. And that costs from like 30 to 50K. We also have a second option of a rapid health impact memo, which is a shorter timeline. And what this does is it really looks to understand the regional impact and an order of magnitude health impact estimate. So this is looking at how a increase in pollution might translate to increases in hospitalizations, mortality, and other things. And this is typically a pared down report that we can turn around in a shorter amount of time. And for both of these, like what we would need, or the inputs, we need to understand kind of permit information, which is often publicly available, to understand how much pollution might be leaving the facility, and any information we can have on the facility itself to help kind of tailor and inform our analysis. So I wanted to just end here, and then I would be happy to take any of your questions that you all had. And maybe just to say that I know this is an important decision, right? And it's a long-term infrastructure decision. And what I feel really passionate about is giving people who are making these decisions just all the information that they might need to make an informed decision. And you can choose to use that information any way you like. But I think it's helpful for you to know is that the health impacts from additional pollution is something that is pretty measurable, and the science has a pretty clear understanding of how we can translate increases in pollution to increases in health impacts. And I think that understanding these answers before a siting decision is made is helpful, because, right, these decisions can sometimes lock in air quality and health for decades in a specific community. So that's kind of a background of what we do, and thank you all for listening, and happy to take any questions you all might have.
Thank you, Dr. Cork.
Okay, I've got a couple questions.
Okay.
Dr. Cork, thank you for that. My name's Jesse. I do have a couple questions. So the data center that you guys did the study on in Virginia, I'm assuming that's like in the data center alley area where there's quite a bit of concentrated. What was the power generation in that area for those particular sites? Do you know?
Yeah, you're right. We're looking at one data center in Loudoun County, which again, they have tons of data centers, and this data center is around the order of, I think, around 500 megawatts.
Okay.
And assuming that's still behind the meter, like the natural gas or the gas turbines, right?
Yes. So this is a behind the meter data center, and actually in Virginia, this is one of the first of its kind. Most of them have been grid connected, but this was kind of a behind the meter data center.
Okay. I'm good. Good. I got more. We'll keep
I do
going.
too, but-
You want to go
Um,
ahead? You can go
I
ahead.
did, really quickly, Dr. Cork, again, thank you for being here. And you may have breezed past this in the beginning, but if you don't mind just really quickly sharing your background, education, and training for the group.
Yeah, of course. So I am a public health researcher. I got my master's in public health from the University of Washington. Over the past 5 years, I've been working on my PhD in biostatistics at Harvard. And my research was specifically about how we can tie increases in air pollution to health impacts we use these large scale administrative data. So we have millions of Americans that we're tracking to understand right how an increase in pollution translates into health impacts. And so that's what we're really relying on is all that science that we know that is linked to an increase in pollution to then translate into this context, right? Where we have proposed facilities that we know are going to emit pollution, but we don't really understand. We want to have a better understanding of what those health impacts are going to be.
Thank you.
Yep. You mentioned earlier about the matter, the small particles, that kind of stuff. Are there any type of guardrails that a community could put in place to try to limit some of that impact that maybe you've seen or made recommendations on?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a couple of determinations. At a high level, right? Determining, okay, how is this facility being powered, right? We know that in this case, if it's using on-site power, we know that that's going to be more impactful to local air pollution than being connected to the grid. Now, within being on-site power, there's different types of generators that you can use and how efficient they are, or what type of kind of tiered technology they use. And those are definitely considerations that, I've learned a lot on this in the technical side, but I do want to pause. This isn't necessarily the thing I'm the most expert in, but there are specific trade-offs you can do. But I would say at the highest level, what is important is where is this energy coming from, and how often are we going to be running this facility or running these power plants that are powering the facility.
Okay. Maybe I'll change the question a little bit. So let's say if we did retain your firm for this type of work, you would be able to dig into, you would get full spec of the project and see what's being used, and then be able to give us recommendations based on the equipment being used, and to maybe help us kind of fine tune those guardrails a little bit better, I'm assuming.
Yeah, Jeff, do you mind repeating that question?
Yeah.
It's kind of coming in and out.
Yep, no problem. And my next question was actually dovetailing with that. So I'll kind of blend them together. So Jesse's asking, you would have access, obviously, to the public permitting information, the type of generators that are planned to be used on the site, things that are already publicly available because they're going through the Ohio Power Siting Board process. Jesse's asking, I think, is with that information, would you be able to help us with recommendations on what those guardrails would be? And that's similar to my question is, you can help us model out the health impact. Could you then also help us determine, okay, what would be, for lack of a better way of putting it, what should be the target for our emissions to mitigate to the extent that we can the impact to the community? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes, that does make sense. And so let me approach. I think there's a lot here. I think this is really useful for understanding the impacts. We can, using the permitted data, allows us to ask, I think, really important questions. And one of them is, the first question we like to ask is, if it operated at its maximum permitted level, which is the legal limit of how much a facility is allowed to emit these pollutants, what would be the potential health impacts, right? Because I think from a health perspective, that's one thing that people are really interested in is, this is a facility that's going to operate for many years. We know that the legal limit is kind of this, ceiling, and we want to understand that. Now, the question though is like, in operation, is it going to be below that? And I think that there are, for example, we found in this Vantage data center facility that, in 2025, they operated around half of their permitted limit. And the reason they operated at half could be because of different technologies they're employing, or it could be because of demand. But I think what we can do is we can propose different, percent of meeting this limit to see how that translates into differences in health impacts. Now, for the specific recommendations around, this is something that I think this information really helps start that conversation, right? I think quantifying the health impacts is really crucial to even start the conversation around what are some mitigation strategies that might balance this economic development with community health. But I also am not fully an expert in what is available to developers to kind of employ. What I would be happy to do is think of, I think, I've thought of a lot of helpful questions that I think could mitigate some of the health harms. This is something I feel really passionate about and developing, but I also don't want to overpromise along, what technical solutions might be available to a developer when they're thinking about mitigating health impacts. But I do have all of the tools to kind of see how, if we have a technology that reduces the amount of pollution in a plant, then I can quantify that, right? But what actually leads to a reduction in that pollution is something that I think developers would have maybe more information on.
Thank you, Dr. Quirk. To me, that makes sense. Would you be able to then help us with asking for understanding that, the legal limit is one thing and that's a ceiling of what is safe? Would you be able to then advise us rather on what should we ask for, and whether that's a cap on emissions, not understanding that a specific technology is outside of your expertise, but informing what we ask for from a developer as far as a level of emissions to mitigate the impact to the community.
Yeah. So what I could absolutely do is, we can model different scenarios, right? And so, right, like depending on, there's different types of technology put on turbines, right? And if we can quantify, we think that would reduce the amount of pollution by X amount, I can definitely translate that into, and we think that would, reduce this amount of health damages. If there's an annual cap on backup generators versus an unlimited, this is another thing that we could definitely look into. I do want to say though that this is something I'm very interested in, but each of those scenario questions I think will be really useful, but would also require probably some amount of time to set up. And I think I have all the tools, and we've done some of this before, but these are all things that we can start answering with science that can, I think, help communities have a little bit of credibility or information in their hands to better kind of negotiate with developers.
I have a question. This is Ron. How many other facilities? I know you've shown this one in Virginia. Have there been others that you can kind of compare to? I know there's a lot of variables in this as far as location, weather, wind patterns, height of the smokestacks, how quickly things dissipate. Do you have another instance where you compared and kind of compare your two reports?
Okay, I heard part of that, but Jeff, you wouldn't mind?
Yep. Do you have other instances? Ron's question was, there are a lot of factors that go into the health impact: meteorological data, wind patterns, height of smokestacks, population density, etc. Do you have other case studies kind of comparing to the one that you shared in Northern Virginia, understanding that there are a lot of variables there and how facilities are set up?
Yeah.
And so forth?
Hey, Jeff, maybe ask him if he has anything in the
So
800
you're like a
range.
handful of kind of case studies.
And specifically, if you have any around facilities that are, around our size, the proposed size here of 800 megawatt.
Yeah. And also, as I was thinking about this, I realized that when I spoke about the Spanish facility, it's actually around half. I think it's actually around 250 megawatts. But we've also looked at facilities like in Memphis, a facility proposed to power the Colossus 2 data center, which is around 1.2 gigawatts. This is being built in Mississippi, right near Memphis. We've looked at a couple of gas pipelines in southern or South Carolina and in Virginia itself. And so you're right that the understanding how pollution spreads, there's a lot of important factors, which is modeling, understanding things like stack height, exit velocity, all these other things. And that's something that we do in our, when I was talking about those two options, our first option is we're able to use a kind of dispersion model that has all of that technical information present in it. And we can model different scenarios that takes into account like the background meteorological data. Now, for the health impact assessment, this is something that we use, this EPA tool called COBRA, that is designed to be kind of a screening level estimate where we understand, we know how an increase in pollution translates into increases in concentration, but that dispersions part of it is simplified. And why I think that's important is that running a full dispersion model can take a lot of intensive time. But these COBRA estimates is designed to give you an order of magnitude estimate of the health impacts. So when I say, for example, for the Vantage facility, up to $99 million in health damages, I don't mean, oh, I think exactly it's going to be 99 million health damages, but it gives you an important order of magnitude that is informed by, like, you know, these regulatory models to get a kind of back the envelope understanding. Or actually, it's not even back the envelope. It's much more complicated than that, but it's not something that is as precise as you know, we know its exact amount. And I think that's really important because I think it complements well, right, a lot of the considerations that are made on the economic side, right? Like developers come and say, hey, we think this is going to generate this amount of income or tax, and that's really important, informed decision or kind of informed estimate that they give you. And I believe that, you know, we should have informed estimates of all of the potential health outcomes that are informed by science and kind of independently brought to the table, because I think that will really lead to the best outcomes where we can kind of meet in the middle or find best ways to kind of mitigate some of the harms while kind of keeping a lot of the benefits.
Yeah. Jeff, we're running 6:30.
I have a couple of questions if I can. If
But
we're
we're going to continue this into the council minutes and maybe 15 minutes or something, and then we'll switch to council. Go ahead.
Okay.
okay, so first question. This is Jeremy. This report that you prepared for this Vantage Data Center, is this an example of your full impact, or is this an example of the Rapid Health memo?
So that is actually a full impact, and I have, you know, I can actually share it with Jeff. Like, we have a website where it links to some of the full reports themselves. You can see it's around 25 pages, and some of the coverage we've gotten on these reports.
Okay. And like you said, the Vantage right now, you said for the past year has been running at about 50%.
50, yeah.
50%. In terms of like when you're monitoring actual output from something like this, what kind of numbers would we be seeing in terms of like air quality index?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way that this kind of works on these scientific models is it translates an increase in pollution to an increase in annual average concentration. And so why we look at the annual average concentration is because it turns out that's what the science has really linked from an increase in pollution to these health endpoints. And so what it tells you is, on average, how much pollution is going to increase in specific areas. Now, what it doesn't tell you is what that looks like on a day-to-day, right? Because we're looking at an annual average. And so the short-term maybe increases of what happens in one day if, you know, there's a temperature inversion and the backup generators go on, and we can maybe have a more acute instance of a kind of high pollution. That isn't something that we're able to show in this model, because this model is more interested in understanding at a population level and over a year how does this translate into health impacts? One thing that I like to say too is there's a lot of different ways that we can kind of complement an analysis like this, which is, installing air quality monitors is really useful. It's not in itself enough because the problem with air quality monitors is you can only put them in specific locations, and we also can't always attribute things to, right? If the air quality monitor goes up, for example, it's harder to say, oh, this is definitely because of this facility, and they might go, oh, well, what if there's wildfires in the area, or we have wildfires in Canada that are traveling down. So I think it's important to have both, but both can be helpful and are designed to answer different questions.
Okay. The reason that I'm asking that is because, are you familiar with purpleair.com?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I was just kind of browsing on their website just because I was aware that they have sensors, and I was looking at ones that were actually right across the street from this facility and some that were directly east of it. And when I was looking at their average AQI over the past year, I didn't really see any changes in it, and all of them were in, like, their numbers were like under 50. So I guess what I'm trying to understand is, if these we're experiencing these health impacts like you're saying, what is there a disparity between what the air quality index is measuring? Because it doesn't seem like it's really affecting it. At least when you're looking at these very specific data points. I understand it's not the whole picture. I'm just trying to understand what the difference is there.
Yeah, so you're saying, okay, we have Purple Air monitors near a facility that has been operating for a year, and has that facility been using on-site power generators?
It's this Vantage data center that you did this study on.
The Vantage data center. Yeah. So a couple of things, right? The AQI, like when we talk about AQI, right? That's a slightly different measure than what I'm talking about for pollution and concentrations, which is specifically about the fine particulate matter concentrations. AQI is really built around kind of what I call like a cue communication tool. It's answering the question, right? So sensitive people change their behavior today, and it's looking at short term versus the science on PM2.5 in health is overwhelmingly about chronic exposure, which is over time, if you're consistently subject to an increase in this type of pollution, right, over time, this is what how we translate that into these health impacts. So they're answering slightly different questions. One of them is like, is the air bad today? And the second is, if we add this much pollution to the air that people breathe over decades, how could that translate into health? And with Purple Air, I think it's, again, a really useful measure, but these are, again, looking at one specific point in time, and for air pollution itself, especially for Vantage, there's a lot of what we call like contributing factors of, we have those that are nearby, we also have wildfires. So there's regional trends that are kind of going up and down, but the science is also really clear that we know that an increase in pollution is always going to translate into an increased risk of health effects. There's no, quote, safe level of exposure. The national limits that we put on air quality does not mean that if something is below that limit that there's no impact on health, right? So the science is pretty clear that we put the limits not in a place where there's zero risk, and so it's just an important additional information. And the sensors, the Purple Air just ask a slightly different question than what we're looking at, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, I was just, because when I'm looking at their website actually like right now, and it says that they're measuring the PM 2.5. So I'm just trying to get apples to apples, because I want as best as we can to have real-time data about what we're looking at with obviously their system is a little bit lower than what we're looking at here, or maybe fairly significantly lower. But what I'm thinking is if the pollution is a very big concern, which I believe that it is, wouldn't we see those numbers bearing out when we're looking at all of the sensors that are within that area, especially the ones that are within a few miles just directly east of this data center, that we would see elevated numbers through the year as a result of that releasing pollution into the air?
Yeah, I haven't I can't speak to the specific data that you have, but you know, these are questions that people are really interested in answering. A lot of the data centers that are in the area of the Vantage Data Center are connected to the grid, but have backup diesel generators. People are really interested in understanding, right? If all these diesel generators went on at the same time, what could be the impact on air quality? So one thing that I like to say, I also like to give context of the type of risk that we're talking about is we're looking at an increase of sometimes from like 0.1 to 0.5 micrograms per meter cubed. And this is a measure of concentration. But for context, the national limit is 9. So you might say, okay, well, what is 0.1 to 0.5? That seems like nothing. Well, the national limit is 9 on all sources of pollution, right? So this is not just one specific facility. This is all sources. And we have a lot of different ways that we have backup levels of air pollution. And one way that I like to think is an increase of 0.1, if we increase the concentration of 0.1, that translates roughly in terms of mortality to the risk of dying in a drunk driving accident. And why I say that example is because I don't think any individual in a community is necessarily worried that they specifically are going to be killed in a drunk driving accident. But at a community level, we understand this risk is not negligible. We make laws and we enforce different regulations because we want to try to reduce that risk. So when we're talking about population risk, it's thinking about how small increases in risk translate over a large population. So it's a kind of a larger scale question than, do I think this specific individual is going to die? And I think that helps kind of frame it a little bit better to understand what we're talking about.
Okay, Jeff, can we wrap this
And
up?
I'm going to run out of time on my free meeting
Okay.
Zoom here. But Dr. Cork, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. We have some discussions to have, and I'll reach out with any next steps. But thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me and the really thoughtful questions.
Okay.
Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, now, is he local?
No, he's in Boston. He's at
Okay, we'll move forward with the council meeting.
I need to adjourn the committee.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we have a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole.
Make a motion to adjourn committee of the whole.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay. You good? Okay. We stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Remain standing for a moment, please. We just take a moment to remember our military overseas and ask for guidance for this meeting and the decisions we have to make. Please be seated. Okay, roll call, Jesse,
Here.
Ron,
Here.
Jeremy,
Here.
Dave,
Here.
Daryl,
Here.
Jeff.
here.
Okay, you have the minutes of April 20th. I can have a motion. You want to look through those real quick to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second,
Second.
roll call, Jesse,
Yes.
Ron,
Yes.
Jeremy,
Yes.
Dave.
Yeah.
Daryl,
Yes.
Jeff.
Yes.
Okay. We don't have any other presentations that I know of. Any department reports? Okay, moving into legislation. I have a resolution for the second reading of 07-2026. A resolution accepting and confirming infrastructure improvements for Asheville Commerce Center, Section 2 for public maintenance and operation by the Village of Asheville and declaring an emergency. Are there any comments or questions on this resolution?
I have none.
So that'll be up for third reading at the next meeting. The ordinance is not being presented at this time, 2026-10. We have any other old business? New business?
The streets should be being painted in the next week. Down here on Walnut and East and Church, they've actually started doing grading today. They're, weather permitting, going to have some blacktop down by Wednesday, they hope. They're cutting everything out. Hopefully that nightmare is getting ready to be over.
Thank you, Bert. Committee reports. Do you have any committee reports?
Not a report per se, but April, now that you're back from vacation, I didn't want to bug you with this while you were on vacation. The Planning, Vision, and Economic Development, if we could, would like to meet on the Monday, the 11th at 6 p.m. I believe we said.
I think that's what we said.
Yeah. 6. Yep.
Zoning. So,
You said
No,
May the 11th.
zoning, I'm still looking into
May 11th.
exactly what our solar policies are in zoning. And once I get that identified, I'll report back and then we can notify the lady that did her presentation.
So we're not meeting. Or that, you're talking about something different.
Different.
That was zoning. Yep.
Okay, as far as the West Side Park, the rains kind of hurt us there. And until we dry out, we can't do much there because it's nothing but mud. But we have the service department is assembling the playground equipment on site. You know, we would hope that we make some progress here in May if it dries up a bit. There's, I don't know, the service department manager said he has to drill like 26 or 30 holes for this equipment, and then has to be put into cement, and then we'll build a border for the mulch that goes in. So hopefully we'll make some progress here in May if the weather will hold up for us. Tree planting, did that happen?
I do not believe that has happened yet. The
Okay.
tree planting with the flagpole, but we'll check.
It's supposed to have today, 10 o'clock.
Okay. I did not drive by there to take a look at it before I came in here, but okay. And as far as parks, Jeff's going to meet with the nonprofit group. They're having a meeting at the firehouse on the 14th. He'll be there to discuss and talk with them. I'm going to be there for ears only to try to understand exactly what they're doing in their group for fundraising and things of that nature. We definitely want to get some things on the books for the county to at least be recognized that we're in need of some funds. If not for this year, at least get on their radar for next year. And I thank Jeff for doing some hard work on that as well. Also, I think after this meeting with the nonprofit, we may end up getting together and doing a committee meeting in here, have them and invite the whole public to come in and get ideas for what the public wants for parks here in Asheville.
Okay. As far as Miller Park, which is the main park, I will say that the service department was able to coordinate and get the slide fixed, that the cracks that were in it, there was a company they found that could fix the fiberglass, which it will last a couple more years now, we hope. And that's all part of your
Yeah. Now,
planning here.
the women's group, is that, I was talked to today about decorating the gazebo.
Yeah. I know Sandy Oliver said something to me about that, and I think, I don't know what the right title is for the women's organization, but we're already working on the 250th anniversary of this year, or over our July 4th celebration, and we have gotten 250 flag out here that's flying, and we have several others to put around the park, and we have banners, and we have a 3x5 banner to put on the side of the building, hopefully mid this month, and then another one to put on the side of the police report. you know, just trying to do Asheville's part to celebrating our 250th birthday. And then, of course, several businesses downtown are going to open up their windows to decorate for people and or themselves. So, you know, we're just trying to have a community spirit here for the 250th anniversary of the United States. Okay. So that will probably cover the mayor's report. April, do you have anything?
No, but just want to remind everyone, we are having the Service and Utilities Committee meeting tomorrow at 6 o'clock here.
Okay. Okay, I don't have any audience comments, so council members' comments? Jesse?
Yep. I just have a couple things I'm going to mention. Last week, the school district met they had their regular meeting and discussed the term sheet. So I just wanted to take a second and thank them for the time that they put into that, and also the difficulty that they had making that decision. Just wanted to thank them for that. And then secondly, there's a bluegrass event coming up this week here in the village. I wanted to make a mention of that. It's a bluegrass history and barbecue event Thursday, May 7th from 6 to 9. It's for the museum here in town. Just wanted to mention that, so that way everybody gets the opportunity, for those listening at home, to come out and support the community and support the museum. And that's all.
I have no comments.
Dave, you have anything?
The only thing I have, Mr. Mayor, is I got an email today from some people that I know. But April, I want to ask for a proclamation for this at some point. However, we can coordinate this. But tonight, I'd like to do this just sort of informally. But Dorothy Ann Richard, who I've known as Ann Richard all my life, will be 100 years old on May 13th. I think it would be wholly appropriate for us as a council to create a proclamation recognizing her for her longevity, her service to the town. I've known Ann and Marvin's family all my life, and they're just good, solid Asheville people who've been here forever. And one thing, so if we can do something like that, I think that would be wonderful. One thing I'll just say in passing as I was thinking about this, we tend to get into this loop sometimes, and I'm as guilty of it as anybody. Well, I've been in Asheville for 20 years. Well, I've been in Asheville for 30 years. Well, I've been in Asheville for 60 years. And Richard can say, hold my beer. She's been in Asheville for 100 years. So sometimes when you think that you're the longest serving person in the room, you're still a newbie. So I just wanted to say happy birthday to Annie, and I hope everything goes well. And if we could do some kind of a proclamation, I think that would be absolutely wonderful. So thank you.
Thank you, David.
Cool. Yeah.
Great idea.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you all for being here. Nothing for me tonight.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn. Oh, you
Could
need
you all hear me better tonight out there?
I can be pretty good.
Okay.
It's more about.
Online.
Yeah. Well, again,
They'll
I
let us
can't
know.
ask those people other than I'm sure I'll hear about it. Oh, you can?
Pull your phone up, Roger.
Okay.
Yeah, you got people checking. We're good.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Aye.
Roll call. Jesse?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Jeremy?
Yes.
Dave?
Yep.
Daryl?
Yes.
Okay, Jeff. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.